The phone call came right after the most emotional match of her career. A voice she had only ever seen on television. A legend who knows what it's like to win this tournament. And the words he spoke? They left the 21-year-old Filipina speechless, tears streaming down her face in a moment no camera could have captured. This wasn't just a congratulations. This was a passing of the torch from the greatest champion in tournament history to the woman who just became the most unlikely finalist. The celebration was still fresh, the tears were still drying. Alex Eala had just done what no Filipino tennis player had ever done before. She had beaten a 4-time Grand Slam champion, stormed into the final of the Mubadala DC Open, and was still processing the magnitude of the moment. She walked off the court at the William H.G. Fitzgerald Tennis Center, the roar of the crowd still echoing in her ears, the familiar Filipino flags still waving in the stands. She had dismantled Naomi Osaka 6-4, 6-2 in a performance that left even the Japanese superstar searching for words. I think I played really well, and of course, such a meaningful match against a great player. So really happy to share the court with Naomi. Eala said after the victory, her voice calm but her eyes betraying the emotion of the moment. But the real shock was still to come. As Eala was preparing for the biggest final of her career, a showdown with world number 3, Jessica Pegula, her phone buzzed. A call from a number she didn't recognize. A voice she had only ever heard on television. A legend who knew exactly what it felt like to conquer this very tournament. Agassi, the 5-time champion of the Washington tournament. The man who holds the record for the most singles titles in the history of this event. The Hall of Famer who knows what it's like to be a young star carrying the hopes of a nation. What did he say to her? The details remain private, but those who witnessed Eala's reaction could only describe it as stunned silence, tears streaming down her face. A moment of disbelief that no camera could capture. A phone call from a legend that left one of the most composed young players in tennis completely speechless. Agassi doesn't call just anyone. He reached out to a 21-year-old from Manila who had just captured the imagination of the entire DC Open. He recognized something special in her, and his message, whatever it was, carried the weight of a legend acknowledging the arrival of a new star. In that moment, Alex Eala wasn't just a player anymore. She was a torchbearer, and the greatest champion in tournament history had just passed it to her. But what was it about Eala that moved a legend like Agassi to reach out? To answer that, we have to understand who Agassi is, and what Washington, D.C. has always meant to him. To understand why Agassi's phone call to Alex Eala carries so much weight, you have to understand what Washington, D.C. means to the Hall of Famer, and what he means to this tournament. Agassi is the greatest champion in the history of the Washington tournament. Period. No player, male or female, has won more singles titles at this event than the American legend. Between 1990 and 1999, Agassi won 5 championships in the nation's capital, a record that still stands to this day. He reached 6 finals overall, dominating the summer hard court swing like no other player before or since. His love affair with Washington began in 1990, a year that saw him reach his first French Open final. After losing that match at Roland Garros, Agassi skipped the grass court season and kicked off his hard court campaign in Washington. He stormed to the title, winning every match in straight sets, including victories against compatriots Michael Chang and Jim Grab in the final rounds. It was his 3rd title of the year and the beginning of something special. The following year, Agassi once again lost in the French Open final, but this time he pushed through to Wimbledon, reaching the quarterfinals before heading to Washington. There, he defended his title for the first time, marking the first occasion he had won an event in consecutive years. He was establishing a pattern. Washington would always be the place where he found his game again, but Agassi's dominance in DC wasn't just about winning, it was about how he won. In 1995, he arrived as the world number 1 and put on a performance for the ages. He beat Stefan Edberg in the final, a match that became legendary for its sheer drama. At 5-2 in the 3rd set, Agassi began to feel violently ill from the oppressive heat. He hit a ball down the line, drifted back to the baseline, and famously vomited in the flower pots at the back of the court, then re-entered the point and won it. That's the kind of grit that defined Agassi. That's the kind of champion who inspires generations. I don't know if this is a fond memory, Agassi later recalled, but it really stands out. Agassi's fifth title came in 1999, a year that also saw him complete the career Grand Slam at the French Open and win the US Open. He was at the peak of his powers, and Washington was his launching pad once again. He defeated Yevgeny Kafelnikov in the final, and by then, his legacy in the city was secure. He had become the first player to win the same tournament 5 times. Across 10 visits to Washington in the 1990s, Agassi achieved a remarkable statistic. He won as many titles as he suffered losses, 5 of each. Nobody owned the capital quite like him. The Baltimore Sun noted that Agassi, with his clean-shaven head glistening under the hot sun, always seemed most at home in D.C. But Agassi's legacy extends far beyond his record. He is one of only 5 men in tennis history to complete the career Grand Slam, winning all 4 majors, and one of just 7 men overall to achieve the feat. He won 60 career titles, 870 matches, and spent 101 weeks as the world number 1. He won an Olympic gold medal at the 1996 Atlanta Games, adding an exclamation point to an already legendary resume, and he was inducted into the International Tennis Hall of Fame in 2011. But what makes Agassi's Washington legacy so special is the timing. He arrived as a young player burdened by expectations, left as a legend, and returned again and again to the city that watched him grow. He experienced his greatest highs and his lowest lows on these courts. He vomited in the flower pots, he fought through injuries, and he kept coming back for more. Washington was never just another stop on the tour. It was a proving ground. And now, that same proving ground has produced another superstar. A 21-year-old from Manila who has captured the imagination of the entire tennis world. A player who has beaten 3 champions in 3 days and is now 1 match away from the biggest victory of her career. When Agassi picked up the phone to call Alex Eala, he wasn't just congratulating a rising star. He was recognizing a kindred spirit. Someone who understands what it means to carry the hopes of a nation. Someone who knows what it's like to fight through the heat, the pressure, and the expectations. Someone who could one day stand where he once stood, as the greatest champion this tournament has ever seen. His message carried weight not just because of who he is, but because of what Washington represents to him. And what he said to Eala, it left her completely speechless. Before Andre Agassi picked up the phone, before the tears and the disbelief, Alex Eala had to do something far more difficult than accept congratulations from a legend. She had to earn them. And oh, how she earned them. The 21-year-old Filipina arrived in Washington as the world number 28, a rising star with a growing reputation for beating champions. She leaves the first week of August as a certified giant slayer, having carved a path through one of the toughest draws in tournament history. And she did it by avenging losses, dethroning champions, and silencing legends. It started with Zheng Qinwen, the Olympic gold medalist. The woman who had broken Eala's heart 3 years ago at the Asian Games. That loss had haunted the young Filipina, a reminder of how close she was, and how far she still had to go. But this was a different Eala. This was the Eala who had just beaten the defending Wimbledon champion. The Eala who no longer feared anyone. The match was a war. Zheng took the first set and history seemed destined to repeat itself. But Eala refused to break. She roared back to win the next 2 sets, avenging that Asian Games loss and completing a remarkable feat, defeating all 3 medalists from the 2024 Paris Olympics. Then came Leylah Fernandez, the defending champion, the woman who had beaten Eala in Stuttgart just months earlier. This was personal. Eala came out firing and won the first set 6-2, but Fernandez stormed back, winning 5 straight games to build a 5-1 lead in the second. It looked like the match was slipping away. Then Eala did the impossible. She clawed her way back from 1-5 to force a tiebreak. And in that tiebreak, she was flawless. She dominated Fernandez 7-1, clinching the match in 1 hour and 53 minutes. She had dethroned the defending champion. She had avenged a painful defeat. She had booked her place in the quarterfinals. Then came Elina Svitolina, the world number 10, the second seed. The woman Eala had already beaten once before, in Berlin in straight sets. Svitolina entered that quarterfinal with revenge on her mind, promising that tomorrow is a new surface, new country, a new city. But Eala had other plans. She dismantled Svitolina again, the same scoreline, 6-3, 6-4, the same dominance. Then came the ultimate test, Naomi Osaka, four-time Grand Slam champion, former world number 1. The woman Eala had grown up watching on television, marveling at her aura and power as she won Australian Open and US Open finals. I remember watching her finals in the Australian Open and also in the US Open, Eala said after the match. Really a great experience to share the court with her. I'm really happy that I was able to produce that level against her. Eala didn't just beat Osaka, she dominated her. The scoreline was 6-4, 6-2. Osaka committed 34 unforced errors, including 5 double faults, while Eala remained remarkably composed with just 18 unforced errors and 1 double fault. The Filipina broke Osaka 4 times, won 74% of her service points, and never allowed the former world number 1 to find her rhythm. I think I was able to be aggressive and play on my terms a lot of the time, Eala said afterwards. The intensity on my legs was also pretty good. And just the mental fortitude. I felt pretty strong out there. Osaka later admitted that Eala's unconventional style prevented her from ever settling into the match. She's incredible, Osaka said. I think she's a star. And it's just really cool to have someone like her that I guess people can look up to. 3 champions in 3 days. An Olympic gold medalist. A defending champion. A world number 10. And now, a 4-time Grand Slam winner. Eala had beaten them all, and she'd done it without dropping a set since the opening round. One more match, Eala said, still processing what she had accomplished. I'm super happy. But I think I played really well. Now the final awaits. Jessica Pegula, the world number 3, the 11-time WTA title winner, the woman who had beaten Eala in the Miami Open semifinals last year, a match that, in many ways, introduced the young Filipina to the tennis world. But this is a different Eala. She has avenged losses to Jung and Fernandez. She has reaffirmed her mastery over Svitolina. She has dismantled Osaka in emphatic fashion. She has demonstrated that she is no longer merely knocking on the door of women's tennis. She has arrived. And that's why Andre Agassi picked up the phone. Andre Agassi doesn't call just anyone. He has spent decades watching tennis players rise and fall, and he knows exactly what it takes to succeed at the highest level. So when he picked up the phone to reach out to a 21-year-old Filipina who had just stunned the tennis world, it wasn't just a gesture of goodwill. It was a recognition of something special. Agassi's career was defined by resilience. He arrived in Washington as a 17-year-old in 1987, losing in the opening round. He returned 3 years later and stormed to the title, winning every match in straight sets. He lost in the first round in 1992, just weeks after winning his first Grand Slam at Wimbledon. He struggled with a wrist injury, inconsistency, and motivation. But he kept coming back. He kept fighting. And by the time his career was over, he had won 5 Washington titles, more than any player in tournament history. Agassi knows what it means to carry expectations. He was the young American prodigy burdened by the hopes of a nation. He knows what it's like to be questioned, doubted, and counted out. And he knows how to rise above all of it. When he watched Eala's run through the DC Open, he saw something familiar. He saw a young player who didn't just win, she dominated. She dismantled an Olympic gold medalist. She staged a miraculous comeback against a defending champion. She beat a world number 10 for the second time in 2 months. And she crushed a 4-time Grand Slam champion in front of a crowd that had turned the tournament into a celebration of Filipino pride. I think I'm still locked in, Eala said after her victory over Osaka. I don't think it's over yet. One more match. That's the mindset Agassi recognized. The refusal to celebrate too early. The focus on the next challenge. The understanding that a tournament isn't won until the final point is played. You can never count anybody out, Eala has said throughout her run. And she's right. She's never counted herself out, even when she was down 1-5 against Leylah Fernandez. She's never backed down, even when facing a world number 10 or a four-time Grand Slam champion.
The details remain private, but those who witnessed Eala's reaction could only describe it as stunned silence, tears streaming down her face.
A moment of disbelief that no camera could capture. A phone call from a legend that left one of the most composed young players in tennis completely speechless. Because Agassi doesn't just congratulate players. He recognizes them. He sees something in them that reminds him of his own journey. And in Eala, he saw a kindred spirit. Someone who understands what it means to carry the hopes of a nation. Someone who knows what it's like to fight through the heat and pressure. Someone who could one day stand where he once stood. One more match, Eala said. I'm super happy, but I think I played really well. The final awaits. Jessica Pegula stands in her way. But with Agassi's words echoing in her ears, Alex Eala is ready for the biggest match of her career. The phone call from Agassi wasn't just a moment of kindness. It was a recognition. A passing of the torch from the greatest champion in Washington tournament history to the woman who just became the most unlikely finalist the event has ever seen. Agassi knows what it means to dominate this city. He won 5 titles here between 1990 and 1999, a record that still stands unmatched in the men's game. He lost as many matches as he won across 10 visits to the capital. 5-5, but in those victories, he built a legacy that has lasted decades. He arrived as a teenager burdened by expectations and left as a Hall of Famer who had completed the career Grand Slam. Washington was never just another stop on the tour. It was where he found his game again. It was where he proved he belonged. And now he sees something familiar in Alex Eala. The 21-year-old Filipina arrived in Washington as a rising star. She leaves as a certified giant slayer. She avenged her Asian Games loss to Olympic gold medalist Jung Chin-wen. She staged a miraculous comeback from 1-5 down against defending champion Leylah Fernandez. She dismantled world number 10 Elina Svitolina for the second time in 2 months. And she crushed 4-time Grand Slam champion Naomi Osaka in straight sets 6-4, 6-2, in front of a crowd that had turned the tournament into a celebration of Filipino pride. I think I played really well and, of course, such a meaningful match against a great player. So really happy to share the court with Naomi, Eala said after the victory. She was calm, composed, and already focused on the next challenge. One more match, I guess. But I'm super happy. That focus is what Agassi recognized, that refusal to celebrate too early. That understanding that a tournament isn't won until the final point is played. I'm in the final for a reason, Eala said about facing Jessica Pegula. She is such an amazing player also for a reason, so I think it's going to be a really good match. So now, the final awaits. Jessica Pegula, the top seed, the world number 3, the 11-time WTA title winner who won her first career title right here in Washington in 2019. She is chasing her second title in a city that holds a special place in her heart. And Eala is chasing her first WTA title, a spot in the top 20, and a place in history. But no matter what happens in the final, something has already changed. Agassi, the greatest champion this tournament has ever seen, picked up the phone and called Alex Eala. He recognized something in her, a kindred spirit, a player who carries the hopes of a nation, a young woman who refuses to back down from anyone. And in that moment, the torch was passed. Not literally, not officially, but spiritually. The greatest champion in Washington in history had just acknowledged the arrival of a new star. The final is set. The dream is alive. And the entire Philippines is watching. But the question remains, who will write their name into DC Open history? The veteran who has been here before? Or the young challenger who has already defied every expectation and received a call from a legend? Agassi, the greatest champion in Washington tournament history, picked up the phone and called Alex Eala after her semifinal victory over Naomi Osaka. His message left her speechless, a moment no camera could capture, but one that will stay with her forever. The torch has been passed, the final awaits, and a new star has arrived. If you enjoyed this story, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We bring you the biggest stories in tennis, drama, and emotion every single week. Don't miss what happens next.